It's January 25th, 2022, beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. My name is Jong-woo Han. I am the president of Korean War Legacy Foundation, which has more about 1,500 Korean War veterans interviewed, not just from the United States, but also other 21 countries that participate in the Korean War. We are doing this to preserve your memory, first of all, because it's been a long time ago, and honor your service. But most importantly, Korean War has been known as forgotten war, and so that we want to make this interview into curricular resources for the teachers so that they can use your direct memories about the Korean War and the Korea you saw in 1950s when they talk about the Korean War in the classroom. This is very important, so that's why we are doing this. Thank you for inviting me to your lovely home and with your white presence here, Becky, right? And it's my honor and pleasure to meet you, sir. Thank you again for your fight. Please introduce yourself. What is your name and spell it for the audience, please.
My name is Ronald Paul Richoux, Sr. It's R-O-N-A-L-D, Ronald, Paul, P-A-U-L. Richoux is R-I-C-H-O-U-X, and I trace my heritage all the way back to Orleans, France.
So, what is your birthday?
I was born on the 11th of November, Armistice Day and Veterans Day in the year 1932.
32. So, you are not even 90 years old.
I'm not quite 90 yet, but I'm living in the shadow of my 90th birthday, and I'm creeping up on it awfully fast. It'll be next November.
Yeah, we are all numbered, but you look very young, sir. I don't find your wrinkle there. Where is all those wrinkles?
I don't feel old, or I don't feel 90, and I never knew or realized that 90 years old feels that good.
So, you are wearing a Marine Corps cap, right?
I am, sir.
Yeah. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, brother.
So, that's 1932. Where were you born?
I was born in a small farming community in La Rose, Louisiana.
Could you spell it?
L-A-R-O-S-E, in the state of Louisiana. My father was a sugarcane farmer, and I had 5 brothers and 5 sisters. I'm from a family of 11 children of French heritage who grew up speaking French and only French. When I was 6 years old and started school, I only knew a few select words in English and dare not use them.
Now you speak English perfect.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, but I do speak French, been to Paris, and have communicated with the French people. And it was very, very easy. And I was told all my life that the Acadians, I'm not Acadian, I am Acadian because of marriage. The French who came from France, which was my grandfather, married into the Acadians because they were also French speaking.
I see. What was the name of place you born?
La Rose, L-A-R-O-R-O-S-E.
La Rose.
It's La Rose, or in English, direct interpretation would be the Rose.
The Rose, okay.
T-H-E-R-O-S-E, the Rose.
So tell me about what high school did you graduate when?
I never graduated from high school.
What high school was it?
I went to La Rose High School, and I left La Rose High School because my family got into financial difficulties, and this was right after World War II, And I went to work on a tugboat for my uncle, who owned a fleet of tugs and was treated extremely well. I finished high school when I left the Marine Corps under the GI Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
And then I attended a vocational and technical school and graduated as a master mechanic with a, I guess it's not a, it's a as a mechanical engineer. Sort
When was
of,
it?
You know.
When was it?
That was in I got out in 54. This was, I went back to school in 1955, 66, and 67, and 68. I was in school just about that entire time, and we had our firstborn was also there. I went to school from 8 in the morning until about 2 in the afternoon, and I worked to earn enough money to exist on sweeping streetcars for New Orleans Public Service from 5 in the evening till 2 in the morning.
So it wasn't easy at the time.
Nothing was easy in my, in my days as when we were young, and it wasn't easy on Becky either. She was quite busy with the children, and we had 6 children.
So you knew her from when? High school?
I met her when I was 14 and she was 16.
You were 16.
I was 16 and she was 14, rather.
She want to make it sure.
Yeah, sure that I get it right. And
you cannot add 2 years to the lady's age.
well, I know that's a
You
serious.
made the biggest mistake.
No, it's not a mistake, sir. It's an offense. There is a difference. So I met her. I was 16, she was 14, and she had never dated anyone, and neither had
Are you
I.
sure?
I have been reassured several times, and I did not hire a private detective to check this out, but I feel certain that it's fairly accurate.
So we'll have a chance to ask her again to confirm that.
Yes, please do, because
All right.
you never know.
Okay, let's go back to the business here.
Okay.
Did you learn anything about Korea from the school when you were in school? Did you know anything about Korea at the time?
Oh, no, I didn't even know Korea existed. But I became a Marine because during World War II, my father was a fan of the Pacific War.
Oh.
And he would listen to the news of World War II every night. And as a little kid, I would stand behind his chair or his rocker and listen to the radio. All we had was a radio. We had nothing else. And he'd listen to the news, and all he'd hear was the Marines did this, the Marines did that, the Marines on Guadalcanal, on Iwo Jima, on Saipan, on Bougainville in the Philippines. And the Marines, I says, well, gosh, when I grow up, I'm going to be a Marine. They are the best, you know. And as a kid, I was slightly persuaded, and the day I turned 18, I joined the Marine Corps and left Becky behind.
Didn't even know about it.
I didn't know there was a Korea then.
So now you are proud Korean War veteran, right?
Yes, I am.
What do you think about this? You never nothing about Korea. Now you are proud about Korea.
I am especially proud of the Korean people.
Why?
I visited Korea, my wife and I, and the Korean government brought us there, and we were treated like royalty.
When did you go back to Korea?
We went back to Korea when, hon? You suppose about 5 years ago, maybe?
So about
It's been longer than that.
8 years ago?
8 years ago?
Yeah, 6 years.
2015?
I don't know.
Yeah, somewheres in there.
I
So,
don't remember very much.
so Ronald, this is a very important question. This is very important question.
Yes.
You didn't know anything about Korea when you were in high school.
No.
You went to Korea in 1952?
51.
51. And then you went back to Korea around middle of 2010, 15 around.
Right.
So
correct.
you didn't know anything Korea, but you saw Korea in 1950s. Now you know how Korea is in 21st century. Please give us comparison in detail. Comparison before and after.
When I was flying into Korea and towards Korea, my mind was completely set because I knew Korea. I spent over a year there and I had traveled every known road in Korea at one time or another, and I knew of a destroyed country where nothing was left standing, where Seoul, we used to give our sea ration to little kids. They would jump on the side of the truck and they were hungry.
Mm-hmm.
We were, as Marines, we were instructed in motor transport, you never fire or abuse a civilian. That's not why you're there. And this was one of the biggest offenses you could do if any Marine would offend a civilian. So we were very careful, however, to protect our cargo, which might have been food or anything else. I carried a pistol because I could not maneuver the rifle out of the truck fast enough. And I'd fire a shot in the air. And that would kind of clear it. One of my sergeants told me that's what you do. You fire a shot in the air and away from them, and they'll usually leave you alone. But we gave them all our sea ration. They were so grateful. When we arrived there, I was very surprised. We didn't do anything. They just walked us right past all the checkpoints and everything, all the veterans that were there. And the people in customs, they got out of their little boots and saluted us. No check, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought us outside and sat us down outside of the airport, and I saw nothing yet except we sat at this bench. I have pictures of all this. And they sat us and they welcomed us to Korea, and they gave us a whole handbag full of all sorts of gifts and mementos, and it was absolutely great. And I just sat there and said, "Hey, this is good. This is nice folks." And it was just absolutely wonderful to see how the TVs were there at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. They had reporters. They had radio stations, and it was just a scene like I never expected. It was like, who cares?
So when you...
Then I saw who cares.
Mm-hmm. Who cares?
Korean people. They're the most gracious and most generous people towards the ones who help liberate them from crazy aggressions that I've ever met.
You are the historical witness. You saw everything, how it's been changed. So when you went to Korea, how big was Seoul City? How big was it? How crowded was it? How was people there in 21st century?
They walked us out after the reception, which I was very impressed. And I walked out and looked around and saw this. And then they called over a bus, a brand new bus. The first ones on the bus that we were introduced to was a doctor and nurses who accompanied us every place we went. The veterans who were in wheelchairs had a high school senior to push their wheelchair and an assistant that stayed with him the entire time. That is honor.
When you were there in Korea in 1950s, it was the poorest country in the world.
And most destroyed and most destructive. And if you are a mature human being and you put your brain and you calculate this, how did this happen? Well, it could only happen with the loyalty, the ingenuity, the education, and the brains of the Korean people. No foreign aid, no outside country could do it for you, as so many in the world have depended on. Only the people of a country can elevate it to that status.
Sir, you just made a wonderful point, very scholarly and academic point, that country doesn't just grow up or develop their economy based on the amount of foreign aid. That's one of the points that I made in my book.
I do believe that any person that loves history and that studies history, as I have done all my life, the statement I just made is very obvious. It's kind of looking at you and saying, here I am. Don't you get it? All wealth, all greatness, all education is self-imposed or done by the love of country and their citizen. It cannot be forced, bought, borrowed, or given to anyone. All of that absolutely has to be through a discipline of self-imposition.
Excellent point. This is great interview because you've been back to Korea so that you can give us before and after picture. And why do you think we don't teach about this much? Why is it known as forgotten war, despite all the points you have made so far in this interview that Korea came out of beautifully from the miserable situation, total devastation, nothing vertically standing there. You told me that, right? I'm not the one. You told me that. So this is an amazing story, isn't it? Why is it known as forgotten war, Ronald?
Well, it is known as the Forgotten War for a very valid reason in America. Because America had just been slightly over 4 years, I believe, out of World War II. And World War II was decimated to this country. I remember as a kid having an absolute fear. My father owned 3 shotguns and had set up a defense for when the Japanese arrived. We were going to cane fields and shoot at them. Now that seems silly to my grandchildren, and they probably would laugh at me, but to a child of 7, 8, or 9 years old, to see their father that concerned, and to have a ship sunk by German submarines 32 miles from our house in Grand Isle, Louisiana, and watch the glow of the fire aboard the ship over the sugarcane fields in La Rose, Louisiana, is not something you're likely to forget. So when Korea came along, I happened to be in the Marine Corps, and the American people had enough of war. It was called by Harry Truman a defense action. And it was not really in the papers or in anything. It was a police action. It was not a war, and it was never broadcast as a war in this country. So therefore, the American people never saw in the Korean War themselves being threatened. So therefore, when you're not threatened, your degree of interest drops automatically. That is the reason why the Korean War. However, if you were there, you know that that belief by the Americans is nothing short of a fallacy.
Show me the manuscript you are working on the Korean War.
I'm up here at this computer trying to recall the most minute of details. And when I'm very quiet, very alone, Becky kind of goes around me. I'm amazed at the things that I can remember that I haven't thought of in years. And it's really, I am lost. Last night I told Becky I was coming up here and I was only be 10 minutes, and this was about 6 o'clock. She came up at 10:30 and told me, "What are you doing?" That's how intent it gets. And this is what I have written thus far. And as I write it, I file it and I put it in protective folders, and this is what I have written thus far.
Show it to your, bring it up to your chin and to the camera so that we can pick up.
The first thing in the book is the picture of the Korean War Memorial. The name of my book is No Regrets. I have no regrets about my time in Korea or my service. I was in motor transport. I drove a truck in direct supply of the front lines and made trip daily to the front lines and dodged much incoming. This is some of my hauling, sir.
It's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah. So when did you leave from United States to Korea? When?
I left in December of 1954. I was on the lines.
No, from the United States. When did you leave for Korea?
The first time.
Oh.
52.
I can't remember right now.
Well, he left.
I left in July, possibly, of 1951, somewheres in there. I boarded on a troop ship, the USS Henrico was the name of the ship, with possibly over 1,000 Marines. And I understood that I was going to be assigned. I was infantry trained, advanced infantry trained, cold weather training in the mountains of Northern California. And I was going on the lines to an infantry,
So you were in
to an infantry regiment, but they transferred me. I was very upset. They transferred me to motor transport. The Marine Corps did. And I told them I don't want to go to motor transport. I've trained. I don't know how to drive a truck. I've never driven a truck in my life. I says, I don't know how to drive a truck. Why are you doing this? Why? And I went to my commanding officer, and he said, why? Private. I looked at your records. You grew up on a farm. You drove tractors. We need truck drivers desperately. Anyone who can drive a tractor can drive a truck. Now get out of my sight. I said, aye, aye, sir. And I was delivered to the 7th Motor Transport Battalion, Dog Company, D Company.
And what was your battalion and unit?
I was with the 7th Motor Transport Battalion of the 1st Marine Division,
Yep.
D Company.
And what was your rank at the time? Private?
I was a private first class.
And where did you arrive in Korea?
I arrived in Korea a month after I told you, sometimes
Right.
in there.
July?
I'm sorry.
July?
Yes, I believe it might have been later. It couldn't have been earlier. But I believe that's the date I went.
Where did you
Yeah.
arrive, in Incheon or Busan?
No. We landed in landing barges.
Busan.
No, it was on the other coast. I was on the east coast.
Wonsan?
Yes, I landed possibly in Wonsan, around there, in a landing barge.
Yeah.
And
From there, where did you go?
from there I was picked up and brought to some headquarters somewheres.
In?
I don't know where that was. As far as I'm concerned, it was in a rice paddy or near a field or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. And they told me then, that's when they separated everybody to different units.
Yeah.
And they sent me to, that's where they sent me to 7th Motor Transport Battalion from there.
Okay.
And I arrived at 7th Motor Transport, and this Sergeant Hutch, we called him Hutch, his name I believe was Hutchison, but he took me and he says, how much experience have you had? I said, I've never driven a truck in my life, sir. And he sat me, he said, you're going to do it now. So he sat me in this monster that I didn't know anything about. It had all kind of shifts and gears and front wheel drive and double reduction, and which I knew after so long. And he says, okay, we're going to drive in. One afternoon, in the parking lot of D Company, 7th Motor Transport Battalion,
Yeah.
he taught me how to drive. And he told me, you ready to go? I was no more ready than when I walked in there, except I knew what the wheel was and I knew a little bit how to maneuver and shift it.
Yeah.
And I jumped in the truck and took off. We had to. There was nobody else. And that's what he told me. This is what the truck looked like. This is in a convoy.
Yeah.
As you can see, mounted on the top of that truck is a 50 caliber machine gun. That is what we had in order to defend the truck and the cargo, and to defend ourselves. And we usually, if we were in danger, we knew when we were going to the front lines or in a dangerous situation, because they would assign a gunner, someone to manage the gun, operated the gun. If I wasn't on a run, sometimes I was the gunner. I was what we called a shotgun rider, like in the Old West. The stagecoaches had a shotgun rider that protected, so we called it the shotgun rider. Well, I knew that this was going to be bad because I was assigned a shotgun. And I had to bring something, I don't know what it was, to the front lines for the tanks that were firing on North Korea.
Yeah.
And when I got up there, the whole place lit up with incoming mortars. And I think at that time we had a Chinese front. The Marines were facing the Chinese, I believe, who had entered the Korean War. And they were really firing a lot. As a matter of fact, the man who met me, he parked me and had me back the truck in the back of a little hill, and he said, "Come with me quick," and we ran to one of the bunkers on the front lines. And we stayed in there, and this Marine sergeant in that bunk on the front lines patted me on top of the helmet, and he says, I sure hope there's no little motor transport girl here that you'd be a real Marine, so quit shaking. It's not that bad." He was a combat veteran, but I was in no shape to not be shaking. But in either case, we lived there, him and I, when it stopped, and it just stopped as quick as it starts. And we started going towards my truck, and it started over again, and we started running towards the truck for some type of cover. And when I got there, I turned around. He wasn't with me.
Oh, what happened?
We put him in the truck. It was pouring down rain. And we took him to a medical battalion. A guy rode on the fender of the truck and held him, and he kept falling on me. My whole he fell out of the corpsman's hands and fell face first in that mud. And
so you still have this symptom, PTSD.
And then I guess I got a little piece of shrapnel right here in my mouth.
Oh.
And I didn't know about it. I just spit out a little blood, very little, and it was nothing. And it was months later, I don't know how long, it might have been 8 months, 10 months later, that my mouth swelled up. And it swelled up so bad that my right eye closed. And they checked me and they told me that there was nothing I could do they could do that I had to go to the medical battalion at the Marines, and I went there and they told me there's nothing they could do, so they sent me to the Naval Hospital in Sasebo, Japan. And they operated on me, and they took it out, a little bitty piece of something, and they recapped all my teeth, and they put me in an old World War II plane in Sasebo, Japan, in Sasebo Bay, and flew me to Tokyo. And from Tokyo, they put me on a casualty plane, and they flew me to the Naval Hospital in San Francisco, California, on Treasure Island. And from there, I was discharged from the hospital and reassigned to Marine Barracks Camp Pendleton, California. And I got a 30 days leave. And I made the best decision of my life. I married Becky.
So, when did you came back to San Francisco from Japan? What year was it? 50?
19 December 19 what? 52. I'm sorry.
You were supposed to come home in September. But
I was supposed to be home in September, but I was hospital hopping, so to speak. And I didn't get home until December. And we had agreed, and we both knew we were going to get married when I came home, if I came home. And it got postponed several times. She had to go to the church and change everything.
So tell me about it. You were able to write letters in Korea, right? How often did you write a letter to your girlfriend at the time, Becky?
Not very often.
No.
Very seldom could I write, because we didn't have the time. We moved, or we were moving someone. And it was very, very, very busy and very stressful times. And I guess I couldn't think of very much more than what I had to do. And I didn't write very much, but Becky wrote to me every day that I was in Korea.
Oh, really?
Every single day. She never missed a day.
Oh.
And when the mail would catch up with us, I used to have as many as 15 or 20 letters to read.
Do you still keep the letters?
No,
come on.
No, I
No,
didn't.
he made me destroy.
I wanted them destroyed because I just felt as though our love and our romance and whatever it was very much a private affair.
Okay.
And I did not want it to be broadcast throughout history. That was my decision, and I'm not certain to this day that it was the correct one. But nevertheless, it was a decision I made at the time. Okay.
So that was one of the joy that you enjoyed while you were in Korea, to reading.
It was the fiber that nurtured you. Don't quit. Mm-hmm. Don't give up. You can do this. Mm-hmm. Because there's a future.
Mm. What is your name?
My formal name is Rebecca Marie Blanchard Richoux.
So,
Rebecca Richoux, actually.
All right.
All those middle names.
Yeah.
Known only as Becky.
Yes.
So let us everybody know your age 2 years younger than Ronald, not the other way around, right?
Yes.
That's correct. I would.
So he just made 88? No,
89.
89. I will be 90
So I'm
November.
2 years younger than him. So I'm going to be next month 87.
What is your birthday?
February the 11th.
Happy birthday,
Thank you.
Becky, in advance. And you look too young, both of you. I don't see any wrinkle. I don't know what's going on here in this house, but you look great. How long have you known your husband?
Well, we were married. Let's see. We knew each other since I was 14 years old. And we will be married 69 years.
Mm-hmm.
70 years.
That's an endangered species here in the...
We will be married 70 years, hon, won't we?
Well, I can't keep
This
up with
this
that anymore. My memory
this
is-
December the 20th.
Yeah, but of 23. We just had it. an
Yeah,
anniversary.
next year. Our next anniversary will be, we have been married for 69 years.
Yes.
So why did you marry him?
Well, there's a story, of course, that goes with that, but it might be a little bit too long. When we were young, you know, the crowd of girls would hang together, and one day we went to visit his cousin's new baby brother, and he appeared in the door. And all of my friends, they were dating, and I wasn't dating. And he appeared at the door, and I told them, he is mine. Do not touch. And ever since then, we just got to be friends, and
It's like a spell.
yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, her friends have told me on numerous times that when they left the house where she first saw me, they all said that she told them, "Do not touch or leave him alone. He is mine."
I didn't
And-
even know him.
And it came to pass.
So you knew that he was going to go to Korea to fight in the
I
war.
did not know that. He did not tell me that.
What? Then he just disappeared?
No,
I joined the Marine
2
Corps.
weeks,
Hold on. You sit calm and let Becky talk.
2 weeks before we were dating, we go to the movies, we hold hands, and we saw each other a lot. And one day he came over to my house and told me that he had joined the Marines.
Yeah.
I said, well, I mean, I knew nothing about that. And that's what he did. He just left. But we were very friendly
Yeah.
by that time, you know. But he never told me. And I
So
never could get
where
over
do you think that he left for?
Well, I knew he was going in the Marines
But
when he left.
but he disappeared, right?
Yeah.
So when did you know that he was in Korea?
Oh, well, he went to California to boot camp,
Mhm.
and we talked. Then he came home
I came home on a 10-day
on a
leave.
10-day leave, and, you know.
So then you knew that he was headed to Korea.
Oh, yeah.
So what did you say to him?
Oh, dear. I
Be
don't
honest.
remember. I don't remember.
I mean, how did you feel it? That he is going to go to war. You said that he's mine
Yeah.
and
But
he's
I was
going to
very
war.
young. I was very young and foolish. And I never dated anyone else before.
You
or
sure?
after. Yeah, I'm sure.
So, Ronald, you are confirmed.
I never dated anyone else.
Well, I wanted to just put this in, that the magnitude, the devastation, the hardship, the atrocities of war, and the knowledge of such was an unknown factor to both of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So we had no idea. When I joined the Marine Corps, I had no idea I was going to Korea. I did not know I was going to Korea before quite a while after I was in the Marine Corps, because then I did not have any first-hand knowledge. You hear, well, there's a war going on and this, but
So Becky, what did you do while he was in Korea? When
I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
I went to high school. Then I went to work. And I was very busy while I was in school. And I would write to him all the time. And I go skating with my friends.
But not with other
No
men.
dating.
Okay.
We just go skating.
oh, you're trying, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, you're really pushing, aren't
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I'm trying
yeah,
to be
thanks, friend.
Hey, it's for you so that you can.
Sure it is. Uh-huh.
So, what did you write to him?
Oh, jeez. I don't know. Come home.
Come home in one piece.
But he gave me a ring when you came home one time.
The only
he
time I
gave me
can.
a ring,
An engagement ring.
engagement ring. But he never talked to me about anything like that, like getting married or anything while he was in the service. But he proposed in a letter.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent a letter to my mom and dad
Whoa.
to get permission.
What a maneuver, huh?
Yes, so I planned a wedding. I had bridesmaids, I had dresses made and everything. It was a go. And then it was supposed to be in 1 month. It kept getting pushed back because of all the things that was going on with him. And finally he came home in December. And that's when we got married.
What did he tell you about the war that he was fighting there in Korea?
He never told me much.
He told me nothing.
He named his truck Becky. The truck's name was Becky. But he had me over there.
You do what you have to survive.
So he wants to be yours, right? Yeah, I think I can tell that. So you went to Korea with him. Before you went to Korea with him in 2015, let's say 15, okay? Did you know anything about Korea,
Only
Becky?
what he showed me. He'd send me pictures. He'd send me those pictures of the truck, and I'd send him my pictures, and he had a picture of me in his truck with all the pictures of me and whatever else he had. And I forgot my train of thought. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Yeah. Did you know anything about Korea? I mean, you were high school, right? So let me ask this question. Let me give you a different question. You know not much about Korea, even though your favorite boy was in Korea, right?
Right.
What about other girls? Were they interested in or were they knowledgeable about what's going on in the Korean War?
We didn't know anything.
Why not?
Well, because
It didn't affect them.
There was no, like today, you got the internet, the phones, and there was no phone. I never talked to him. I never spoke to him until he came home. I knew nothing. And the radio and the TV didn't have much information.
No?
No, not at that time.
There was war. Millions of people were killed there.
Right. And
And-
we didn't know all that.
I think I clarified that somewhat when I
did
answered the
not know.
question about the forgotten war
Yeah.
and why it was. You
I
know,
mean, we didn't know anything. We were just like
That's-
in another, I mean, today you cannot imagine it. I mean, kids go to school and there's Facebook and, they're away, but they're not away. They're on Facebook or they're in virtual, they're doing everything. It was nothing then.
Okay. So
Nothing.
you had a boyfriend in Korea during the war. So let's assume that rest of your class, the girls, didn't have a boyfriend in the Korean War. So they have nothing to be interested in the Korean War, right?
No,
No.
nothing.
So when you went to Korea with your husband in
It's
2015,
another world.
tell me about it. What did you see?
It
What
was
did you
another
think
world.
about it?
It was a very progressive place. It had all kinds of businesses and buildings and people that I had never been exposed to before in my life. You could say I was sheltered because I didn't have all the things that people have today. Did not have anything. And I was born in a country town also. And they were farmers. My mom and dad were farmers until we moved to the city when I was 7 years old.
But it was just the way it was
yeah.
then. And people today, one of the things that I had to learn is that the people of today cannot put themselves in the picture we try to paint because it is unknown totally to them, and many times they think that it's tales
Yep.
as to how hard we grew up, how tough they think it's just stories.
Yep.
There's no way that several generations can go back and walk in the shadows of the generations being explained to them. No matter how much you study history,
Yep.
it's not possible. And that is part of the problem
Yes.
that I have always faced in communicating or trying to communicate what I wanted to about Korea. It's like I told you.
Yeah. But let Becky talk about
see-
Korea you saw. How
Well-
people were there, how building, how crowded. Tell me.
It was very progressive. The hotel we stayed was very progressive. I mean, they had restaurants just for us on the bottom floor. Each nation had a counter for us. I had never seen that before. It was more progressive than anything we have in the States or had. I don't know much today because we don't go anywhere today. But anyhow, I was very impressed on how the people lived in these condominiums, and it was like a whole city, they told us, where they had everything they needed in this one building. Everything. And they only had one car per family. So these people did a lot to progress to where they are today. I mean, even then. And we're living in another century where most of our friends are gone. And so I feel like, well, this is the way progress goes, I guess. We're just lucky to still be here to see what's happening.
See, you are listening from your husband Ronald about Korea he experienced in 1951 to 52, and you saw 21st century Korea.
Yes.
What do you think about this whole transformation? And your husband is part of whole big picture. Without him, Korea would never gotten second chance to rebuild their nation after the war. What do you think about this whole transformation, and what do you think about your husband's role there?
Well, his role was important for them because they needed progress from where they came. I mean, they would sit on the floor in these mud houses, I think, and they would heat themselves when it was cold, and it gets cold there. He can attest to that. It was cold. He froze most of the time when it was cold. And these people had to live in that. And to see where they are today, we went to the village where they have a village of back when,
Yeah.
and I saw it from, they
Folk village.
the folk village.
And
so,
I want to interject something. I have to right now. I will interject something. I saw the Korea that I knew in 1951 and 52 in the folk village.
Yep.
When we left the five-star hotel that they were keeping us in, with 5 different eating places, which one was American, European, Asian, Middle Eastern. They had 5 of them.
so he was responsible
The-
for that.
Yeah. He contributed to that.
He contributed.
Yes.
The love and appreciation that they showed us was unequal to anything I have ever witnessed.
That was organized by the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, MPVA of Republic of Korea, which support this whole program, okay? So I want you to be aware of that. But what would you say to your husband about the Korean War veteran? Becky?
Good job, but he came out of it with a lot of,
Baggages, right? PTSD?
yeah.
And were you awarded with the Purple Heart?
No, I never was.
Why
because there were no records kept. There were they didn't even know where I was. It was just all, and I did write to Washington and explained everything to them. I had a beautiful Argus camera. All the Korean pictures that I have on my, and I have a bunch of them that I took, stayed in Korea. Didn't take my sleeping bag, my everything I had, all the souvenirs, everything I had collected. Nothing was taken. They just shipped my body out of Korea. And I never could find my sea bag or any other item that I had. When I lost everything. Everything I had. And that probably is the most, I guess, difficult thing to get used to or to understand or to deal with, because that was my life. That's what I had kept. I've never seen my camera again. All kinds of additional photos that I didn't send to Becky. I used to send her my film and she'd develop it. But it's just there are so many things.
So you got the frostbite from Korea
Yeah,
and still suffer from it?
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
It saved the nation.
Yes, for sure.
I was at the I go to Ochsner, which is one of the foremost medical centers in the world, and they sent me to the VA hospital in New Orleans because I had pains in my legs, and that's where they told me that I had severe frostbite and that the nerves have died in my legs because of frostbite. And I never knew I had frostbite, but all of my life, after I came out of the Marine Corps, I've been very clumsy. I fall easy. I tripped. I used to try sports, and I never could play because when I'd run, I'd fall. And I thought, all of my life, I thought I was clumsy. And come to find out, they told me, no way, you've had it bad.
Yeah.
So that's. But I'm grateful. I've had a wonderful life. We raised a man. It's it's just been absolutely wonderful. And my Korean experience, I believe, added a tremendous amount to my existence.
Yep.
I learned and I remembered.
Yep.
And it brought me down to earth way more often than a lot of my peers did.
Yes, for sure. I can tell. This is the longest interview in New Orleans. Yes. But it is my luck to have both of you together, because you are also, during the war, your boyfriend was there, so you have a great witness on that.
That was my reason for coming back.
Yes.
It was because of,
That she was my reason for coming back. I knew the whole time I was there that I had to come back.
And you still together.
Oh, absolutely.
That's very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ronald, I want to thank you for your service, but I want to ask you the last question.
Yes.
What would you say to the American people, American young generation and history teachers about the war that you fought?
It doesn't take any time at all to answer that question. I would say that if you do not know history, and if you do not study history, you will damn sure repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
Every mistake that history made and every wrong move, you will repeat them.
Mm-hmm.
But you should also learn the correct ones and the good ones, and you should never forget them, because the interjection by Harry Truman of intervening in Korea was absolutely the right thing to do, because it destroyed the Chinese and the communists and the North Koreans' ability to take over the world. What was next? The Philippines? Then Japan? Then it had to stop somewheres. And our nation was lucky enough to have an old grunchy country boy from Missouri as president who had enough brains to see what would happen if we did not go to Korea. Thank you, sir, for the interview.
Thank you so much again for your fight for South Korea and for the freedom and liberty, right? That really counts in our history, because South Korea represents democracy, capitalism, and free country prosperity. Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir.